There's a moment in every person's financial life when something quietly shifts a kind of invisible click that changes everything. One day, you're checking your investment account, thinking your progress is crawling along, wondering if you'll ever reach your goals. And then suddenly, almost without realizing it, your money is growing faster than your effort. It's making more money than you do at your job. That moment isn't luck, it's math. And more specifically, it's the power of compound interest finally coming alive. Hi, I'm Jung, and I spend way too much time obsessing over how compound growth turns ordinary people into millionaires while others stay trapped in the paycheck to paycheck cycle. Today, I want to show you exactly when that shift happens, the 3 key milestones where your money stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a teammate. But before we dive into the math, let me ask you something. When you picture wealth, what comes to mind? Maybe a guy in a crisp suit trading stocks on multiple screens? Maybe someone who inherited a house or a trust fund? But here's what most people never realize. The people who actually build serious wealth often start with nothing special. They don't have 6-figure salaries or secret investment tricks. They just understand one fundamental truth. Wealth doesn't grow in a straight line. It snowballs. It starts small, slow, almost invisible, then gains momentum until it becomes unstoppable. There are 3 points on that snowball's journey that change everything. The first tipping point at $100,000, the second around $650,000, and the third at $1 million, where your money begins to do the heavy lifting for you. These aren't random numbers. They're thresholds proven by math, where compounding flips from theory to transformation. Now, most people think $100,000 is just 10% of the journey to $1 million. That thinking couldn't be more wrong, and it's exactly why most people quit before the magic begins. Here's what they picture: a clean, predictable climb. Save $10,000, you're $10,000 closer. Save $50,000, you're halfway to $100K. But money doesn't work like that when it's invested correctly. In fact, the early years are painfully slow until one day, everything accelerates. The truth is, patience is the hardest part. We live in a world where waiting for anything feels unbearable. Groceries in 30 minutes, new movies in 3 seconds, dopamine on demand. But building wealth isn't a sprint, it's a compounding marathon. See, when you invest properly, your money isn't sitting still, it's working. It earns returns. And those returns earn their own returns. It's like a factory that keeps expanding production without hiring new workers. And that's the real secret. The 8th wonder of the world. As Einstein allegedly said, compound interest. Whether or not he actually said it doesn't matter, because it's true. Those who understand it build wealth. Those who don't stay trapped, trading time for money forever. Let's make this real. Suppose you invest $500 per month, about $125 a week, roughly the cost of a few takeout meals and subscriptions. Assume a modest 7% average annual return conservative by historical standards. How long until you hit that first 100K milestone? Roughly 7 years and 9 months. Sounds long, right? But think back 7 years, how fast did that go? During that time, about $46,000 comes from your own pocket, while $54,000 comes from investment growth. Not bad for letting time and math do the work. Still, this stage feels slow, which is why most people give up. But here's the secret no one tells you once you cross 100K. Everything changes. It's like gravity flips in your favor. So, you've reached your first $100,000. It might not feel life-changing yet, but make no mistake, you've just crossed the hardest part of the journey. From here on, the game starts to tilt in your favor. Here's why that first 100K is where compound interest finally wakes up. Before that, your progress was mostly powered by your own effort, your savings, your discipline, your sacrifices. But now, the money itself starts to contribute meaningfully to your progress. Think of it this way: if your portfolio were a campfire, your first few years were just gathering sticks and trying to spark a flame. At 100K, the fire finally catches. From here, it starts to generate its own heat. Let's put that into numbers. It took you about 7 years and 9 months to reach $100,000. How long do you think it takes to reach $200,000? Most people assume another 8 years. Logical, right? Same savings rate, same return. So it should take the same amount of time? Wrong. It actually takes about 5 more years, and that single fact blows people's minds. You've cut the time nearly in half to double your net worth. By year 13, you're sitting at around $200,000. Of that, only about $78,000 came from your own pocket. The other $122,000 was created by your money working for you. This is the point where the math starts to bend in your favor. You're no longer pushing the snowball uphill, you're chasing it downhill. And here's where most people completely underestimate what's coming next. At around $400,000, which happens near year 18, things get wild. You've contributed about $108,000 in total, but your investments have grown to $400,000. That means roughly 3/4 of your wealth came not from your labor, but from growth on top of growth. You're now earning around $28,000 per year in returns completely passively. That's nearly a full-time income for many people, created by patience and math. Think about that you once worked nearly a decade to make your first 100K. Now your investments produce almost a third of that every single year and you don't have to lift a finger. And here's the best part. None of this required you to live like a monk. You didn't need to move into a van or stop buying coffee. We're talking about $500 a month, a few conscious trade-offs, eating out less. Canceling unused subscriptions can literally change your financial trajectory for life. The key isn't deprivation, it's consistency. But something even more powerful happens around the $650,000 mark, the second major tipping point. This one doesn't just change your math, it changes your psychology. At roughly $650,000, compound interest begins to mimic a full-time job. Let's say your portfolio earns a modest 8% per year. That's about $52,000 in returns annually. That's the equivalent of an entire median U.S. income without working for it. Think about what that means. You've effectively hired a silent employee, your money, and it's now earning a salary for you. At this level, your perspective on work, risk, and time begins to transform. Losing your job stops being a crisis. Taking time off doesn't feel irresponsible because you now have assets generating income in the background, giving you something far more valuable than cash freedom of choice. You could use that breathing room to start a side business, take a career risk, learn a new skill, or just spend more time with your family without the anxiety of what if. This is where wealth becomes more than numbers, it becomes control. The truth is, the $650K milestone isn't about being rich, it's about becoming resilient. You've built a safety net strong enough to catch you, one that doesn't depend on your boss, the economy, or the next paycheck. And once you hit this level, something changes in your brain. You stop asking, how do I make more money, and start asking, how can my money make more money? That single mindset shift is the difference between being financially comfortable and being financially unstoppable. If the $100,000 milestone is about patience and the $650,000 mark is about freedom, then the $1 million milestone is about identity. Because when you finally hit that 7-figure mark, something deeper shifts not just in your finances, but in the way you see yourself. Let's rewind for a moment. You've been investing $500 a month, averaging around 7% returns for nearly 29 years. It's not flashy. It's not overnight success. It's methodical, almost boring. But one day, you log into your investment account, and there it is, $1,000. And for a brief moment, you sit there staring at the number. You realize that every small, unremarkable decision, every night you stayed in, every time you chose consistency over instant gratification actually mattered. That's when you feel something almost impossible to describe relief. Not because you're rich in the flashy sense, but because you built something that can't be taken away easily. You've reached financial critical mass, a point where your wealth grows faster than you can realistically spend it as long as you stay smart. At this level, your portfolio earning 7 to 8% per year produces $70,000 to $80,000 annually, nearly a full income. And that's before factoring in Social Security, side projects, or any other passive income. You could choose to keep working, retire early, travel, or start something new. You're no longer forced to work, you choose to work. That different choice is what true wealth is about. And here's the fascinating part. The people who actually make it to this point rarely feel like they've won. They don't suddenly feel rich. They feel validated because they've proven something to themselves, that financial freedom isn't about luck or privilege. It's about discipline, time, and math. But there's another layer to this milestone that's often overlooked: psychology. At $1 million, your relationship with money changes forever. You stop thinking of money as something you earn and start thinking of it as something you manage. You start to see opportunities everywhere to invest, to grow, to contribute. Maybe you want to back a friend's startup, buy an investment property, or start your own business. The key difference, you're now doing it from a position of strength. not desperation. The fear of financial disaster fades. You no longer worry about missing one paycheck or one client. You've created a system that supports you instead of one that drains you. And what's truly mind blowing is that the climb from $1 million to $2 million often happens faster than the journey from zero to your first 100K. That's the pure magic of compounding at scale. At this stage, you don't need to double your savings rate or find some secret stock picking formula. You simply need to stay consistent and avoid stupid mistakes, panic selling, over leveraging, or trying to outsmart the market. Because now, the math is outrageous in your favor. If your portfolio grows by just 50%, you've added another $500, $1,000. That can happen in a handful of years in a normal bull market. And to reach $2 million, you simply need it to double something the market has historically done every 7 to 10 years. Every million after that gets easier, not harder. Why? Because now your returns are measured in six figures. A 7% return on $2 million is $140,000. That's not just a statistic, that's a life-changing income level generated by your assets, not your labor. But here's the catch. Some people hit $1 million and relax. They let their discipline slip. They stop learning. They stop optimizing. They coast. And that's the biggest mistake you can make at this stage. Because $1 million isn't the finish line, it's the starting line for a completely new game. The game of multiplication, not accumulation. It's about leveraging your capital to build optionality, the ability to live life on your terms, not anyone else's. Whether that means more travel, early retirement, creative projects, or simply more peace of mind. Your first million gives you the foundation to design life intentionally instead of reactively. The hard part isn't reaching it. The hard part is keeping the same focus and humility that got you there. Reaching your first million feels like the summit, but if you zoom out, you'll realize it's just a base camp, the starting point of a much higher climb. Because true financial freedom isn't a number. It's a state of mind, a place where money no longer controls your choices, your time, or your emotions. Let's be honest. Most people believe financial freedom is about having enough to never work again. But in reality, it's about having enough to never worry again. That's a massive difference. You could have $2 million in the bank and still feel trapped if your lifestyle expands with every dollar you make. Or you could have $500 to $1,000 invested and feel completely free if your life is simple, your needs are clear, and your money works quietly in the background. So what happens after you hit $1 million? This is where the game transforms from accumulation to optimization. You start asking smarter questions. How can I protect my wealth from inflation and taxes? How do I structure my investments for income, not just growth? How can I design my lifestyle so that it costs less without feeling like I'm sacrificing? You realize freedom isn't built by earning more, but by needing less and managing better. The numbers support it too. If you have $1 million invested earning just 6% annually, that's $60,000 per year before taxes. If you've kept your expenses modest, that's already enough to fund a comfortable, flexible life in many places. Add in a small side hustle, rental income, or part-time consulting, and you've created something few people ever experience: permanent financial security. And yet the people who get here rarely brag. They live quietly, drive normal cars, wear simple clothes, and rarely talk about getting rich because they've learned a profound truth: money buys freedom, but time is freedom. They stop chasing the next zero and start chasing quality time with family, with themselves, with life. Here's the paradox. Once you stop obsessing over money, you actually make better financial decisions. You stop reacting emotionally to the market. You hold through the dips. You see volatility not as danger, but as opportunity. That calm confidence, the ability to watch the market crash and say, "I'll be fine," is the real end game. At that point, you don't need motivation. You don't need hype. You don't even need luck. You have time, discipline, and systems, and that's unbeatable. Because if compounding is the most powerful force in finance, then contentment is the most powerful force in life. So what's the final lesson? That financial freedom isn't a destination, it's a practice. You don't wait to live until you're rich. You build wealth by living intentionally, long before the money shows up. And when it finally does, you realize something beautiful. It was never about the million. It was about becoming the kind of person who could patiently earn it,